Hello everyone, a very good morning. Online students, am I audible? Kindly write yes, no, whatever. So, many of you might be knowing, and those who don't know, I am Karandeep Singh and I'll be taking your anthropology classes from now on. And we are going to begin a journey that will be approximately of 6 months from now on. And that's why, before I begin formally the classes, I just need to discuss few things before it. Okay, so the formal lectures, say specifically the topics that we are going to read, might begin from tomorrow. But today I'll give you a brief orientation of what we are going to read, what the subject is all about, and how we are going to proceed. Something, the rules of the game. Okay, what I expect from you and what you should do in this 6 months in order to grasp a command over this subject. Because as we all know, the optional can make you or break you in your mains. Okay, that plays a very important role. If you somehow get an additional score in optional, it plays a very crucial role maybe in your selection, in your service allocation, and moreover the cadre. And beyond that, it also plays a very important role, we can say, in your marriage also, because the selection, service allocation, the cadre allocation, everything will ultimately decide your spouses or the choice of the spouses. So this optional is going to play a very big role from now on. So please pay more attention and be very much attentive for this 6 months. And for the 6 months, if you go on or follow the path that I suggest or that we discussed today, I can assure you that this will be one of your strongest points throughout your mains. You will have the most confidence with respect to at least anthropology. I can assure you that for this 6 months, आप बस वो करो जो मैं कह रहा हूँ. Okay, so let's start. I'll just begin with two keywords about anthropology. So what actually is anthropology? I just happened to read a book very recently that was by a scholar. You must have heard about that scholar, Yuval Noah Harari, who is the author of Sapiens. So he published a book, Unstoppable Us. And the first volume of this book is basically how humans control the world, or what gave the humans the capacity to control the world. And the second volume is why the world isn't fair. The world that we are living in, why it is not just, why isn't fair. So, and this is in crux or in short what we are going to read in anthropology. How a species like us is dominating the entire world, and when we started to dominate the world that we created for us is not fair, is not just, it's not equal for all. So let's see the first factor. Why do we control the world? So what do you think makes us the most dominant species of this earth? Anything that you can say that makes us the most dominant species of the earth? Intelligence. Anything else? Self-consciousness. बाकी लोग ठीक है बताओ यार पैसे दिए इसके, और you want to contribute somewhat. Ability to do complex processes. So there are various other animals also who can do a lot more complex processes as human singularly can do. Articulation, innovation, coordination. Yes, this one word coordination and another word somebody suggested like articulation. These two processes actually made us what we actually are. Yuval Noah Harari says that what gave man the ability to dominate is only one thing, that is the ability to gossip. हम एक दूसरे के साथ चुगलियां कर सकते हैं. Yes. And when we gossip, we create social relations. The gossip, so for example, you all are strangers in this class, but gradually you will be gossiping with each other. बगल वाले से कैसा लग रहा है, समझ में आ रहा है, सही ऑप्शनल चूज किया नहीं किया, सही क्लास चूज की नहीं की, and gradually gossiping, ये सब तो मेरे को पहले से पता था, and all such kind of gossip will create a bond. And these gossip, so in the first few days what will happen, you will shuffle your seats. सीट्स की लड़ाई है एक हफ्ते के लिए या 10 दिन के लिए. Everybody wants to sit at a particular location, but gradually after 7-10 days everybody's seats will be fixed somewhat in that zone, in that range you will be sitting, and your neighbor will also be fixed, more or less the neighbor will be fixed. What actually has created that relation? Gossip. This gossip that you will be doing with your neighbor during, before or after the class will create that social relation, and this social relation will stay with you maybe for very long, at least till the time you are preparing for civil services, or if you both get into the services together, or maybe at a difference of 1 or 2 years, still that relationship will continue. Okay, and that ability to gossip between the humans long back gave them the capacity to become a stronger species as compared to other animals. Imagine, as a single human, I cannot fight with a lion, tiger or any other animal in the jungle, and we initially were living in the jungles as hunter-gatherers. So right now we are at a point that we are protecting them by creating national park, wildlife sanctuaries, and our ancestors who died long back, maybe by an attack of a lion or a tiger, would be looking at us from above and thanking us, or they would be very proud of us. किसी ने मेरे को मारा था और आज तू इसको protect कर रहा है. You have created national park, you have created wildlife sanctuaries, protecting them, and we are protecting these animals from whom? By creating these kind of laws. From us, from ourselves. कि अगर ये हमारे contact में आएंगे तो बेचारे मारे जाएंगे. So that journey of once fearing those animals and then rising far above them in the hierarchy, so that we have to create the laws to protect them from ourselves. That is what we are going to explore in anthropology. And the journey starts as we were able to gossip. We were able to create a social relationship. So there is a very famous narrative or story of Ubuntu. It's a story, or it's a process of an African tribe. So there was an anthropologist who went to study an African tribe, and what he did, he brought a basket of chocolates and sweets and put them under a tree. There were a lot of tribal kids who were actually playing somewhere beside that tree. He said that anybody, any child who actually reaches to that basket first will get all the sweets. He was very surprised to see that all the children, they basically joined their hands, they walked towards that basket together and took that basket or consumed that basket together. He was very confused about it. The very next day, what actually happened, that these tribes were hunter-gatherers, they were hunters. So one of them actually went to the jungle and he was able to hunt a big animal. He brought it, and he was actually very much happy that he was able to get the big animal, and he actually started cooking it. All collectively they started cooking it, and all the other male members of the community, they started criticizing the hunter, saying that ये कौन सा animal मारा है, इससे ज़्यादा तो मैं ही कर सकता था. This animal is without meat, this animal is very thin, XYZ, everything they were criticizing. But to the surprise of anthropologists, that animal was very big with big amount of meat that could feed at least hundreds of people. But yet he was being criticized as a weak hunter. So he asked one of the anthropologists that, why do you behave in such a manner? In the morning the kids were not able to race, or they went together. So he gave him the concept of Ubuntu. That means I am because we are. Okay. that idea of existing because of collective existence. And that is what the humans are capable of, or that is what made human capable to survive in all the extreme circumstances. That is, I am because we are. The ability to create social relations. Okay. And living together. When we were able to live together, this gossips. Actually, we wanted these social relations to be permanent, to be long lasting. It should stay with us forever. For this, another factor that came into play is the ability to make fictions, kahaniyan banana. So we all believe in some fictions, we all believe in some kind of stories. And this phase of elections, you all have been inspired by one or the other storyteller. These political leaders are nothing but the storytellers, and we follow these storytellers. So, and the story or the narrative that we believe in, our vote goes to them. And this storytelling is an art that actually gave us the ability to dominate the entire world, the ability to create fictions. And one of the fiction that we created as per anthropology is God, a supernatural power that controls everything, that created us, that is divine, some spirits, some soul, something like that. Or religion is the fiction that we created. Now, I'm not challenging anybody's personal belief, just keep it out of the class. We are just discussing the academic aspects. So according to anthropology, religion is a man-made entity, a man-made cultural entity. And it is because of our ability to create fictions, ability to create stories about some supernatural entity engaged in some kind of task and doing some kind of supernatural task which is beyond the capacity of any human. And it's not that fiction, कहानी तो मैं भी बना सकता हूँ, आप भी बना सकते हैं. But what will give that fiction a credibility? That is collective belief on that fiction. I created a fiction, but if everybody believes in that fiction, then that fiction gets a lot more credibility. And not just that, it will be passed on from one generation to another. And that will then be a part of our social identity. We all will associate ourselves to that. हम सब एक fiction में believe करते हैं. We became a part of the society. It becomes a part of our identity, and that gives permanence to our social relations. तो एक fiction में believe करने वाले लोग एक religion के हो गए. Okay, so be it Hindus, be it Christians, be it Sikh, be it Muslims, or whatever religion that we talk about, they all are believers in some fictional stories as per anthropology. So that is what made us an entity called as Homo religiosus. That is a entity that believes in religion or a supernatural fiction. Now living together again has to be stabilized. Okay, now what happens that individually we were hunter gatherers, we could do a lot of things individually, say hunt कर सकते हैं, gather कर सकते हैं, लेकिन एक दूसरे की इतनी ज़्यादा ज़रूरत नहीं है. Actually when we started doing agriculture, we had surplus, we started exchanging those things, and due to this exchange of things, some kind of a system developed, and that system is called as economics, and that makes us Homo economicus. That is a species which actually believes in exchange of things. Exchange of things, what is economy? You exchange some goods with respect to services, or you actually exchange some goods with respect to money, or something, some currency of exchange is there. It can be good for a good, good for a service, or maybe money for a good or money for a service, whatever it can be. But these kind of exchanges of goods and services creates a system of economy. Some rules of exchange will be there. And that is what is called as Homo economicus. And again, another thing that happened, so imagine that initially there were 40-50 people living in the jungles as hunter-gatherers, but gradually as the population would have expanded, we would have like population like 100, 50, 200, 500,000, something like this. How to manage these many people? 10-12 log hai to every day they can come together, they can sit together, they can decide what needs to be done. But if there are 500 people, can they decide on every trivial matter collectively together every day, every moment? It's not possible. So then there needs to be some way in which the matters of the society needs to be taken care of. And that led to unequal distribution of power, and that is what is called as politics. So that creates an entity called as Homo politicus. So whatever we believe, economy, religion, politics, as something a divine entity, something that was created by God, no. It is because of us living together, we created some kind of systems like this, Homo politicus, Homo economicus, Homo religiosus. And everything that is being created, you can understand, it is to maintain the affairs of humans living together. Aur wo kyun? What is the reason for this? Because I am, because we are. Because the social relations should remain permanent. Humans cannot survive on their own, and the social systems needs to be stabilized, and that's why such kind of systems were created in order to give stability to human society, in order to manage the affairs of human society. Okay, and this capacity to actually manage our affairs gave us a dominance over any other animal. The question is, the second part is, the world is not fair. The world that we created is not that just, although we talk about it, but we talk about the concept of justice, liberty, fraternity, equality, democracy, republics, and all such kind of thing. But the world that we created is far away from it, very far away from it. We are trying to reach it, but we are very far away. What's the reason for this? आपने कभी सोचा कि ऐसा क्यों है कि that we have to fight for justice? Why everybody inherently is not towards equality? Or we can say that we want equality, but with respect to the ones who are above us. So everybody wants the wealth of the super rich, Ambani, Adani and all, to be distributed among the poor. But when it comes to us, यार तेरी भी तो distribute होगी. Then you feel like नहीं, just हमसे ऊपर वालों तक की distribute होनी चाहिए, हमारे पे नहीं. The privilege or the equality is only till the person who are above us, and the super rich would be thinking about their damn rich people. So they believe that they are the ones who are unjust, they are the ones who are kind of dominating, they are trying to misuse their authority, power, money, everything. So why is it that we are inherently like that? The reason is an instilled emotion of fear that is deep down among us. So the journey so you must have heard about that journey of evolution, wherein we evolved from a quadruped animal, which was very similar to chimpanzee kind of thing. Okay, we evolved from a quadruped animal, we became bipeds. And in that journey, for a large part of our evolutionary journey, we have lived in the jungle just like any other wild animal. Before, somewhere 10,000 years ago, we started doing cultivation, agriculture and all. We started living sedentary life, or permanent settlements were actually created, or villages were created, something like that were created. But before that, we were just like any other wild animal living in the jungles. Okay, and in those jungles, we basically were very much fearful of other animals. That fear is deep instilled in us, fearful of the animal attack, lights और ये सब technology were not available. So our ability were restricted only during the sunshine or daytime. And all these things actually created a sense of fear, fear of hunger, fear of life and death, fear of attack, all such kind of fears. And जब हमारे पास power आया, imagine a person who is extremely in fear and then becomes powerful. What kind of person would he become? It is said that he would become what we call as a banana republic dictator. Or a kind of dictatorial tendency will definitely come. एक आदमी बहुत डरा हुआ है और आपको power मिल जाए. You will immediately try to eliminate all the kind of threats that you have, isn't it? And that is what we have become. The moment we got the power, we started one after the other eliminating all the possible threats to ourselves. Because fear तो deep involved है और जैसे जैसे power आएगी आप सबसे पहले अपने threats खत्म करोगे. And that is the reason that we created a world which isn't fair. Everybody is running behind power, and when he gets the power, this deadly combination of fear gives or creates a tendency to eliminate all the threats. Okay, now such is the tendency, and that's why what actually has happened, inequality has become more like a norm. So we see there are some people who are super rich. Okay, they are having private jets, palatial mansions, and a lot of other things. While some, they're living merely in the huts or homeless people, striving for one meal. There are some people who are extremely powerful and some who are extremely miserable. There are some people, many of you were asked, what do you want to become when you grow up? Isn't it? Everybody. छोटे जब थे तो घर वालों ने पूछा होगा क्या बनना चाहते हो बड़े होके. And that is a common conversation that we usually do when we actually interact with a kid. But have you ever gone and asked to your maid's kid, what do you want to become when you grow up? आपके घर में जो झाड़ू पोछा करने आती है, मेड आती होगी सबके घर में. Have you ever gone and asked that kid? And I believe that the answer would be for sure no. Nobody would have gone to a maid's kid or a servant's kid and asked the same question. Why? Because the choices of becoming something is also not available to that person. So these choices are not distributed uniformly. Or there are certain countries where people cannot even think of what to become, what not to become, what occupation to choose and what not to choose. So that is the inequality or the world that we have created for ourselves. And ये इसकी शुरुआत कैसे हुई? How does it begins? So the story starts with the beginning of agriculture. When we were hunter-gatherers living in the forest, there was nothing called surplus. There was nothing called, क्योंकि एक जगह से दूसरी जगह move कर रहा है. Okay, you cannot stay in a place. You stay there as long as there are animals or some fruits there. But when you see the animals are declining, the fruits are not there, the water is depleting, so you move from one place to another. And when the life was nomadic, it is very difficult to carry a lot more luggage with you. You cannot accumulate things and move from one place to another because there was no concept of servants. There was no concept of porters who will be taking your luggage and moving from one place to another. So everybody has to carry his or her own luggage. And अगर मान लो move करते समय कोई animal attack कर दे, so the more luggage you have, less chances that you will be able to escape. So it was always better to keep ourselves light and minimalistic. But as we shifted towards agriculture, we started living a sedentary life in a hut, in a village, something like this. We were not allowed to move from one place, or we didn't want it to move from one place to another. And then a tendency to accumulate started. We started to accumulate things. Whatever we could possess, we started possessing it. And that is, for the first time, humans encountered surplus. How? Being hunter gatherers, we were hunting the animals. जो भी hunt किया, consume कर लिया. Extra है, everybody in the group will eat. Because there was no concept of refrigerator, something like that, that can be stored and can be used next day or very next day. But agricultural grains, they can be stored. They have a large shelf life. They can be stored for months and can be consumed. And surplus was something that was a feature of agriculture that was seen by humans for the first time. अभी surplus सबके पास equally distribute नहीं होगा. Everybody would like to have that surplus so that it can help them in time of crisis. We do try to accumulate surplus. आप भी करोगे. आपको अगर per month you can survive on say 10,000 per month or say 20,000 per month, but you won't take a job that gives you only 20,000 a month. Okay, so suppose if I give you two choices, one is like your expense is 20,000 a month and I'll pay you 20,000 a month for the lifetime. And the second is I'll pay you 10 lakhs a month for 10 years. After that you have to look for another job. I'm 100% sure that all of you unanimously would take a job of 10 lakhs per month because we want to have that surplus. Okay, 20,000 में that means we will be restricted to whatever we need. फिर हमारे पास discretion नहीं रहा कि कहीं घूमने जाना है, कुछ करना है, तो कैसे करेंगे? Okay, that tendency for the surplus is already there. And that is when this surplus came up. This surplus was not equally distributed. The one who had extra surplus became more powerful in the society. And this surplus unequal distribution create hierarchies in the society. Hierarchies in the sense that the one who had extra resources, means extra grains or any kind of resource, would actually ask somebody to do some kind of task for him, for which he can pay that person in terms of resources, because ultimately we all were struggling for food or survival, and that's why he could pay that person, and that would make a lot of other people work for him. And that is how the hierarchies would have started. But is it something like that hierarchies developed only in the agricultural phase? उससे पहले hierarchy नहीं थी? Some scholars say that no, hierarchies were there, but these kind of material hierarchies were not there. The hierarchies were based on prestige. How prestige? So very simple argument that when we were hunter gatherers, one thing you must have seen, अभी जिसको हम बहुत ज़्यादा question भी करते हैं, that male dominance or patriarchal societies. But what actually made societies patriarchal all over the world? ऐसा क्यों नहीं है कि कुछ societies matriarchal हो जहाँ पे female dominance हो? Why is it that patriarchy is almost in 99% of the societies all over the world? It's a common problem across the world. What made it universal? The evolutionary journey of hunting gathering. So when we were hunter gatherers, the men used to hunt and women used to gather. There is a reason for this. The reason is expandability of men, or men were more expendables than women. आदमियों को ज़्यादा खर्च किया जा सकता है compared to the women. Why? So suppose let's take the case of 10 women, 10 men का group है. Now one instance is the 10 women went for hunting and 10 men went for gathering. The other is 10 men went for hunting and women went for gathering. Now in both the cases, suppose if the women went for hunting and 9 women died and 1 came back. The other case, men went for hunting, 9 men died and 1 came back, only 1 came back. Group का सबसे ज़्यादा नुकसान कब होगा? When women went and 9 died and only 1 came back. Because अगर मान लो 10 आदमी गए और एक ही वापस आया, that one man has the capacity to impregnate all the women. This 10 women can give birth to 10 child, and that is how the group will continue. But suppose if only 1 woman comes back, can the 1 woman give birth to 10 child? Not possible. So the entire group's existence will be at threat. If all the women die, in that case the group will die. The group will perish. But if the men die, only 1 man remains, still the group can grow because the ability to impregnate एक आदमी ही काफी है and 10 women can give birth to 10 children and so on and so forth. The group will continue. And that is why men were more expendables. Men को खर्च किया जा सकता था but women could not be spent because their existence is responsible for the groups to continue. Second reason that why women could not go for hunting is because of their body and the bodily activity of menstruation. Women, they engage in or they have like periodic cycles of menstruation, and when they actually experience this menstruation, at that point, maybe thousands or lakhs of years ago, they could not actually, there was no concept of pads and something, sanitary pads, something like that. So then, and women, just like any other wild animal, were moving naked and the blood is dripping out of their body. They would create a trace mark that can be traced by any other wild animal. And if the woman moves, she will be creating a trace that can actually lead to the entire group. And the wild animal can attack the group, the entire group will perish. That's why the movement of the women was relatively more restricted as compared to the movement of men. Hence, men were again more expendables, and due to which men used to go for hunting, a kind of division of labor was there, and women used to go for gathering, say collecting some fruits, nuts, seeds, something like this, which was more or less near the area where they used to live or reside. But somebody, imagine, is risking his life for the group, for the food of the group. कुछ तो मिलना चाहिए उसको, something. But at that point of time, there was no Bharat Ratna or Padma Shri or Ashok Chakra, something like that, that can be given to the men. Or some currency that could be given to the men, कि दे ज़्यादा पैसे ले ले. What else could be given to them? Prestige, izzat, vocal, aura. Such kind of things could be given to the men, and that is what pleased the men. That is how the hierarchy would have developed in the society. The men got more prestige as compared to the women because they were engaging in a job that was risking their life. Okay, so that is, the hierarchy started then itself. But now the hierarchy become more prominent as we move towards agriculture because of surplus. And when this surplus और धीरे धीरे ये टेंडेंसी इतनी ज्यादा आने लगी that the society started to get divided into class, high class, low class, or what we call as master servant or master slave relationship started to come up. Because I have more resources, I can pay some people to work for me, to give some kind of services to me, and that is how we created a world that isn't fair. And actually, by this, we created a race that we all are running now. That what we call as the rat race. Rat race to come or rise up in the hierarchy. So most of the peoples who actually are aspiring for civil services, तो बहुत रेयर ऐसे केसेस होंगे आप में से जो सुपर रिच फैमिली से आए होंगे. Like the family who is in news right now for driving a Porsche in Pune. तो आप में से किसी के पास आई डोंट थिंक पोर्श होगी घर पे, या आपके फादर ने आपको बर्थडे गिफ्ट दिया होगा पोर्श. एंड इफ दैट वुड हैव बीन द केस, यू वुडंट बी सिटिंग हियर प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर सिविल सर्विसेज. वेरी रेयर अ चांस इज देयर. So what actually have motivated you to rise or to prepare for civil services? The tendency to rise up in the hierarchy. Most of you have actually engineering की होगी, किसी कंपनी में जॉब लगी होगी, and then you would have been doing 9 to 5 वाली जॉब, and then you would have realized कि मैं तो इस 9 से 5 वाली जॉब के लिए नहीं बना हूँ. क्या मेरा काम सिर्फ एक्सेल शीट बनाना है? क्या मेरा काम सिर्फ अपने बॉस को, और एवरीबडी फील्स लाइक कि मेरा बॉस, आई कैन नॉट यूज दैट वर्ड बट यू ऑल नो दैट, एवरीबडी फील्स दैट मेरा बॉस तो वही है. एंड देन यू रियलाइज दैट आई एम नॉट मेड फॉर दिस काइंड ऑफ जॉब, एंड देन यू रियलाइज दैट कि इस सोसाइटी में, लिविंग इन इंडियन सोसाइटी, व्हाट इज द बेस्ट वे टू राइज अप इन द हायरार्की एंड द क्विकेस्ट पॉसिबल वे टू राइज अप इन द हायरार्की? Either you become a civil servant, IAS, IPS, foreign service, IRS, or you become a politician, isn't it? And that's why these kind of aspirations, hundreds or thousands of students every year, they want to prepare, because that is the quickest way to rise up in the hierarchy. The race started here. The tendency to accumulate surplus or to have more power rise up in the hierarchy, and we all are running that rat race. ये कहानी कि हम देश की सेवा करना चाहते हैं, just save it for your interview, you all know that, but reality में what is the true reason, deep down you know it, that मैं लाल बत्ती के साथ एम्बेसडर में घर जाना चाहता हूँ. And I'm dying to see the reaction, not of my parents, but of my neighbor. Okay, how they react. Because we want, yes, everybody should actually acknowledge our presence wherever we go. We should be the center of attraction. We should be the one who should be getting all the privileges, or whatever the privileges we feel we deserve or our parents deserve. And that race all started here to accumulate surplus. हम यही करेंगे throughout our journey. We'll try to accumulate surplus power, we try to accumulate surplus material, surplus money, or whatever it is. So the life that we are actually following is run on 3 P's: paisa, power, and prestige. These 3 P's is what we want to accumulate, and they are all interconnected. And all this because of an event that happened 10,000 years ago, and that is agriculture and a tendency to accumulate surplus. Okay, because usse pehle there was no reason to accumulate surplus. Surplus would have been disadvantageous to move from one place to another. But now we all are following it. Okay, so that's why ab surplus chahiye. So there will surplus. Ab suppose karo, can it happen that everybody can be equally rich? So suppose if I say that everybody gets thousands of crores in India, then that means all are equally poor, because that thousands of crores will lose its relevance in the market. So if everybody cannot be equally rich, the richness comes only when you have certain thing that others cannot possess. You will buy something, you will have, or you own something that others want but cannot possess. And that is how the richness actually will come. And we want to accumulate those things only that is owned by us, desired by others, but they cannot have it. So that's the rat race. That's why we want to rise up in the hierarchy. Okay, so that's the reason the world can never be equal, just, or fair. Now the things that we have talked about is somewhat the culture that we created. But kahin na kahin, some scholars say that it's all the game of the genes, or what we call, एक बहुत famous book है by an author, Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene. Okay, now he says that tendency to become powerful, the tendency to rise up in the hierarchy, everything is not because of something that happened 10,000 years ago. It is something that is deep hardwired in us. हमको बनाया ही इसी तरीके से गया that we all are inherently, biologically, by nature selfish, and that he calls as the selfish genes among us. Now what is this whole concept? That concept is that every gene or humans have a tendency to become immortal. We want to be immortal. Okay, and that tendency to become immortal can be possible only by one way. अब हम जिंदगी भर तो जी नहीं सकते, we cannot live for hundreds or thousands of years, but how can we become immortal? By producing as many kids as possible. Because if you have many kids, you're passing on your genes to the next generation, and even if you die, the genes will survive and they will have more kids, The genes will pass on to the next generation. The genes will live. So we have all this selfish gene that wants to keep itself immortal. Now he begins with a very interesting story that there were two people, two male, who were actually moving from one place to another with their children, and in their way they found a house full of apples. बढ़िया एकदम पके पके सेब पड़े हुए थे वहां. One of the man was very honest, and the other man was very selfish, very kind of mean or self-centric kind of a person. Now they both went or saw that house. One of the man, he just picked up 2-3 apples, one for himself and 2-3 for the children, that one apple each, and they will go. And when asked, why don't you pick up more, he says that there is no point of picking up more, I'll go home and एक apple काफी है. He was honest. And other was like very selfish, दो type का आदमी था. उसने सोचा कि जितने ज्यादा इकट्ठे कर लो बढ़िया है. So he picked up all possible apples, or maximum that he could, and took it to his house. What happened that they lived in the same village. The same village experienced a famine and a drought the very next day. That's a hypothetical story. But that same village experienced a famine and a drought the same day. Now the man who was honest had nothing to eat. He could have, if he would have picked up apples from that house, but he had nothing to eat. But the man who was selfish had a lot more surplus to survive the days of famine and drought. He survived. His children survived. The honest man couldn't survive. His children could not survive. And the genes that were honest also got extinct. And throughout our journey of evolution, all those honest tendencies have been eliminated. We have survived because somewhere deep in our ancestors, somebody was selfish. And he would have chosen a path that would have been necessary for our survival. That's why our lineage could survive. If they would have been honest, definitely they would have got eliminated. And that is the story of selfish genes. The behaviors determined by the genes who want to become immortal. Let me take another story. Again a hypothetical story, but we have seen in the movies also that there is a woman and her two children. The house of the woman is attacked by a robber who has actually a gun. He points the gun towards the children of the woman. Now you must have seen that the woman might say that, please don't hurt my children, instead shoot me. मुझे मार दो, मेरे बच्चों को मत मार. Now you must see this as a philanthropic or say kind of altruistic behavior, isn't it? कि माँ की ममता है, माँ प्यार करती है. But Richard Dawkins says that it is because of this selfish gene. The mother has invested a lot more years in giving birth to the children. She has lost a part of her body. She has invested several years in making these children grow up. And that investment would go blank, सब खत्म हो जाएगा, bankrupt, if these children die. And moreover, the mother who might be at the age of 40, 45 might not have the capacity to give birth to the children again, to raise them again. And that's why it's better for the mother to die, because for the genes to remain immortal, the children should survive. Because if the children live, they'll marry, they'll give birth to the children, and hence the genes would remain on the earth forever. But if the children die and the mother survives, there is less a chance that the mother will be able to give birth to the children again and will be able to raise them so that they could marry and give birth to the children, isn't it? And that's the selfish gene. It's not altruistic behavior, it's not philanthropic behavior, but the behavior which is programmed into us through these selfish genes. And throughout our journey from a quadrupedal animal to a biped animal like this, we all have taken several selfish decisions, and all selfish decisions for our survival. And that's why we are the species who have the highest survival instincts. When it comes to survival, we can do, or we can go to any kind of extent to actually survive on earth, isn't it? We have seen people like who can actually do cannibalistic activities, can actually consume the meat of a fellow human being if it comes to survival, because of the highest survival instincts that we have. And this whole stories that we actually have created to understand ourselves, क्या ये reality में हुई है? Or is it again a gossip that I was doing with you just to create a social bond with you? So these kind of gossips, these kind of fictions actually have been told by the scholars. कि ऐसा हुआ होगा तो वैसा हुआ होगा. And that is what we are going to read about us or humans in anthropology. And that is what we will talk about, that what actually made us survive and dominate over entire world and became the most dominating species on earth. Not just earth. Now we are planning to move to another planets, maybe Mars, maybe moon may, so maybe ho sakta hai ki not you, but maybe one generation from you, they might be doing their honeymoons on moon, on Mars, and you, maybe when you retire or as a cabinet secretary, you might be booking a plot. एक मार्स में एक प्लॉट बुक कर लिया है 100 गज का, एक छोटा सा हॉलिडे होम वहां पे बना लेंगे, something like this. That's not a far-fetched story. Okay, so this journey again, छोटा सा और एक interesting trivias हैं that our evolutionary journey, just like we see, has created a lot of behaviors. We also have several other behaviors that is because of our evolutionary journeys. For example, I was just watching that meme, बहुत recently एक कोई meme video था, उसमें it was showing 3 boys who were having a lot of tension. And जैसे कि for example one friend says कि मेरी नौकरी चली गई और मुझे बेकार में निकाल दिया गया. The other friend says क्या करेगा अब, देखते हैं. Then the second friend says that मेरी सैलरी बहुत कम है, expenses बहुत ज़्यादा हैं, loan EMIs बहुत ज़्यादा हैं. The other friend says how are you going to manage the expenses? देखते हैं. And you will see a tendency among the boys of whenever in trouble saying देखते हैं, isn't it? You will find it, and now you will start observing it more closely. देखते हैं क्या करना है. Now this देखते हैं is because of our uncertainty while we used to go for hunting when we were hunter-gatherers. Because most of the times when the hunters went for hunting, they were not sure whether they will be able to hunt or come empty-handed. देखते हैं कुछ मिल जाएगा तो ले आएंगे. They were even not sure whether they will come back or not. आएंगे कि नहीं आएंगे वो भी sure नहीं था. देखते हैं आएंगे कि नहीं आएंगे. And that's why throughout for millions of years, the human men, or they were actually programmed for uncertainty. And that's why men are more capable to handle uncertainty. In uncertain situations, men are more capable to work. Okay, uncertainty, because they have been programmed to handle such kind of uncertainty throughout, say, millions of years. Only one thing that men were doing, hunting. And they were uncertain whether they will be able to hunt, whether they will be able to come back alive or not. Everything was dekhte. And able to handle uncertainty is definitely more in men. Other case, let me tell you, women, they are more able to identify colors. So all the girls sitting in this class, they definitely have a deeper sense of color identification as compared to any boy in the class. I can vouch for it. And if you ask them different shades of green, they can tell you tens of shades of green. For a boy, normally the shade of green is dark green, light green. Okay. But if you ask a girl, so she might tell you shades of green like sea green, violet green, and pata nahi kaun se green. And she can also differentiate also. But usually if a boy describes somebody, उसने लाइट ग्रीन कलर की शर्ट पहनी थी या डार्क ग्रीन कलर की शर्ट पहनी. The woman might be more specific with respect to that shades of green or blue or whatever. Why is it the case that women are more specific about the color, more conscious about the color as compared to men? And you can also check it if you go for a shopping with your mother, specifically the boys. You will better understand that women are more conscious and more aware about the color shades. The reason is because women were gatherers. They used to pick up the fruits, collect the fruits based on their colors. They used to identify whether it is edible or not based on the colors. And that's why their sense of vision, color identification developed more throughout the million years of the activities that they used to do. On the other hand, men identity or men tendency to, for respect to direction, actually developed more. Don't take it otherwise, girls. Men are better drivers as compared to women. Okay, not because they are given more freedom to drive or ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. It's because of our evolutionary programming only. So suppose if there is a man, for millions of years he was hunting. He was actually tracking a moving object which he has to hit precisely with an object. There may be a spear, maybe a stone, something, a object which is moving that has to be hit, and that's why his tendency towards moving object, direction and all became very specific, very pointed. Compared to the women who were not physically engaged in such kind of activities of tracking a moving object. And that's why they have more appropriate sense of direction compared to रास्ते बहुत जल्दी भूल जाती हैं women. As compared to boys, they remember the ways, the tracks to a particular area more appropriately, comparatively. Okay. So it's because of our evolutionary journey of the activities that we have done, and all several activities that we'll talk about, we'll see that somehow it is deeply connected with the past that we have lived. For thousands of or lakhs of years that we have lived in the forest, and maybe as other animal, we have developed certain kind of tendencies, and gradually we'll try to explore all such kind of things as we move towards anthropology. Okay, so this is in short that I have just tried to open up something with respect to anthro. Now coming to what we have to actually read in what way. So it will not be such kind of trivias that will be coming every day, but we need to understand certain kind of theories and all in order to understand how these theories or this hypothesis actually came up. Okay, so what we'll be doing, so we have paper 1 and paper 2 for anthro. Paper 1 can be divided into 4 major sections. One is socio-cultural anthropology. Second, linguistic anthropology. Third, physical anthropology. And fourth, archaeological anthropology. So these are the 4 major domains under which we will be covering paper 1: socio-cultural, physical, archaeological, linguistic anthropology. Okay, I'll be beginning with this socio-cultural anthropology, which actually deals with the society and the culture associated with humans. So how this culture was created, how society was created, okay, how humans started to live together, and so on and so forth, and what are the rules related to the culture. We'll talk about it. Okay, and the beginning of this will be from unit 6, theories. We'll start tomorrow's lecture with theories, and then we'll move to certain other units like religion, society, culture, and unit 2, that is an economy and politics, like this, in this order. Then we'll move to linguistic anthropology, which is unit 7, which usually deals with linguistic aspect or language as a capacity solely belonging to humans, and the properties of the language, and how the physical capacities or capabilities that we have actually gave us the ability to speak, create language, and communicate with those languages. Now Language is very complex. So animals also communicate. We also communicate. But our communication is far more complicated. So you must have heard about the term called as between the lines. You need to understand between the lines, something that is uniquely human only. Now, एक बहुत ही ट्रिवियल एग्जांपल से बताते हैं बिटवीन द लाइंस का मतलब क्या है. नाउ सपोज देयर वाज, आप लोगों ने एक मूवी देखी होगी गजनी. So there is a very famous song there, कैसे मुझे तुम मिल गई. You must have seen that. Okay, everybody must have heard that song. Now there was a man, he used to sing the same song before the marriage and after the marriage. Okay. So before the marriage, the same song, that is कैसे मुझे तुम मिल गई, was happy, go lucky type. He was praising. And after the marriage, कैसे मुझे तुम मिल गई. Now that is between the lines. Okay, something that can mean something very much different, even the same phrase, but just the tone changes. And the same phrase will mean completely different. Or something that is hidden, that is not explicitly being told, but the other one actually understands. बहुत सारे ऐसी चीजें हैं जो हम explicitly नहीं बोलते, but when I communicate, you understand, and you understand it automatically. Okay, and that is between the lines, the complexity in the communication that the humans do, and they only can infer. That is not available with respect to other animals. Okay, that is what we will be seeing in linguistic anthropology. Then physical anthropology will be talking about human biology. And a lot of people have the doubts whether we'll be reading that kind of biology that we used to read in 9th and 10th. No. We are not going to read human anatomy and just ki ye body part is doing so and so kind of job. But we will be talking human biology from evolutionary perspective. Something that how we actually moved from a quadruped to a biped. Now one very classic example of that human biology of moving towards bipedalism, that is moving on two legs, is with respect to female anatomy. There is a bone here, that is pelvic bone. Okay, now that bone is very important for humans, specifically the bipeds, because if you see the pelvic bone, it's very similar to a wash basin. आपने wash basin देखा होगा. So there is a hole, big hole at the top, and then there is a sink hole, small hole at the bottom. Very similar is the pelvic bone, a basin shaped bone. Now that wash basin के जो दो holes हैं, say the top hole and the bottom hole, similarly the pelvic bone also has two holes. The top hole is called as the pelvic inlet and the bottom hole is called as pelvic outlet. And the baby, when the woman delivers a baby, the head of the baby should be able to pass through that pelvic holes, inlet and outlet. Imagine if the head of the baby becomes bigger. In such cases, the baby's head would not be able to pass through pelvic outlet and the woman might die with the pain of conceiving. I'm not talking about the time 30 years अभी से जहाँ पे cesarean deliveries होने लग गई हैं. Before that, there was no concept of cesarean deliveries. And in that case, if the baby is not able to pass through that pelvic outlet, imagine the woman and the baby both will die because of the pain. The woman will not be able to deliver the baby, and they both will die. And that's why the pelvic bone had to be created in such a way that it should be broad enough so that the baby's head should pass out of it, isn't it? But एक problem है. Imagine the pelvic bone is too broad. So in such case, bipedalism would not have been possible. Bipedalism कैसे possible नहीं होता? So imagine if the pelvic bone is broader than this, so we would have walked like this. The legs would have been separated very far away, and it would have become very difficult to manage the body if it would have been difficult to manage the legs forward. So we would have been walking like this. And in such case, the body would always be in a condition to topple. दौड़ना तो बहुत दूर की बात है. Would not be able to manage the weight of our body on the two legs. A small force at the top would make us topple or fall down, isn't it? And that is what is called as obstetrical dilemma that nature had in order to shape the pelvic bone of the human, that it should not be too broad to prevent bipedalism, but it should not be too narrow so that the baby could not be born. So nature ने क्या किया? Nature came up with a very unique solution, that the brain growth will happen after birth. And that's why 90% of the brain growth happens in the first 5 years of child growth, isn't it? Nature planned it that way. And that is the journey that our body had to go through from moving from quadrupedalism to bipedalism. And a lot of other trade-offs actually happened while we were moving from quadrupedalism to bipedalism. And that kind of journey that we'll be seeing in physical anthropology. That is, from evolutionary perspective, we actually have a lot of genetic changes and anatomical changes that actually enhance our chances of survival. This is what we'll be exploring in physical anthropology. And the last is archaeological anthropology. It provides us the evidences of the physical changes that have happened with time. हमें कैसे पता चलेगा कि किस point of time पे हमारी body में क्या changes आ रहे थे? What are the evidences? What are the proofs? So the archaeological sites, the fossils that we obtain, कहीं पे किसी का skeleton मिला, किसी का skull मिला, and that will tell us how we actually were changing biologically, and not just biologically, also culturally. For example, you actually happen to visit a particular archaeological site, वहाँ पे आपने देखा कि उसी जगह पे एक ऐसी archaeological burial है, pit है, in which there is one skeleton only, and that is too big, and it has all the luxurious items, maybe finely crafted tools, some jewelries, they are buried with that person. And then nearby that pit, there is a pit in which there are tens of skeletons kept there, with very minimalistic items along with them. What does it suggest about the society that you are reading? Society में hierarchy है. Yeah. So there is some kind of social stratification. Somebody was superior, and that's why even after the death, he had an exclusive pit for himself. And somebody might belong to some commoners, some lower strata, and that's why they were buried collectively and with minimalistic goods. Okay, so this all tells us about the past. So archaeology. So evidences for the past will be collected from here. So collectively, we will be exploring humans from all the sides, biologically, culturally, linguistically, and also the evidences from the past. And that is what we will be reading in anthropology, a 360-degree study of human beings. Whatever has happened in the past and what made us what we are right now, the collective journey of it. Okay, now the second paper actually is more with respect to Indian society, Indian humans. And here it can be broadly divided into 3 categories: caste, village, and tribes. So these are the 3 categories that will be that's the syllabus of Indian Anthro is divided. So we'll be talking about, so in our society, आज के time पे आप लोगों ने elections चल रहे हैं और they are almost about to end. You have seen that caste conflicts or caste tensions are playing a very big role in Indian elections. Okay, so coming from UP, so आप में से UP से कौन-कौन है? Big population. So I'm very happy because belonging to Republic of Uttar Pradesh gives us always an advantage. We are always at majority wherever we go, but sometimes not for so good reason. I'm also from UP Gorakhpur. So in my region, what actually is dominating is the conflict between 3 communities: Nishad, Thakur, Brahmin. And if we talk about UP in total, the 4th community that comes into play, Yadavs. and the entire election is revolving among these 4 caste equation. UP level pe Nishad not so important, but another community that comes into play, a Dalit community, Jatavs, the vote bank or erstwhile vote bank of Bahujan Samaj Party, Mayawati thi. Okay, and this caste equation changes every elections, and that's how the political fate of the state is actually decided. So what role is caste playing and how caste became so much an important factor politically, that is what we are going to see. Okay, and then the village. So still after so much of urbanization, development and all, 69% of India's population still lives in the village. And that was not the case when we got independence. It was more than 95% of the total population living in villages. And that's why our society is primarily rural. And that's why it becomes a very important factor to understand Indian society. And that is what we are going to see, that what is a village, how the social life of the people living in the village is determined, and how they actually manage their affairs, and what role does the caste plays. Then a significant population of India, approximately, if I talk about the numbers, out of 140 crores, 10 crores, they are tribes. Okay, so approximately 8 to 9% population, they are tribes. And tribe, अब आप देखोगे कि बहुत सारे conflicts हैं, बहुत सारे protests हैं, they are actually demanding tribal status. A lot of communities in different states, they are asking for the tribal status. So what actually is a tribe? Whenever you imagine that when I say a tribe, you would be coming up with an image of a person who is semi-naked, makes some unintelligible sound, some kind of image, a person living in the jungle, something like that, isn't it? Now that is the image that has been created by the British scholars, Orientalists, yes. That is what you think, but let me give you an example. There is a possibility that somebody sitting beside you might be a scheduled tribe, and he can speak English as well as you can. He might have been dressed the same way as you have dressed, might have got education in the same school or same kind of institutions that you might have got. आपके बहुत सारे दोस्त होंगे जो colleges में आपके दोस्त होंगे, they might be a scheduled tribes. But still the image of a tribe, when I say that tribe, that comes to your mind is that Orientalist, or the image that was created by the British government, British scholars, or British rule in India. Okay, now we are going to explore that who actually are the tribes and what is the difference between tribes and scheduled tribes. Are they the same thing, same entities? Or are they different? And if different or same, बहुत सारे communities हैं वो बोल रहे हैं हम tribes हैं, but they are not recognized as scheduled tribes. They are demanding themselves to be recognized as scheduled tribes. So what is the difference between them? That political recognition, why is it that important? Okay, so we'll talk all about this, tribes, scheduled tribes, their problems, that what they are facing, and whether the policies of the government, whether they are fair in this unfair world for them, and what to do to make the policies more fair for them. Okay, so such things that will be covered in paper 2. Now, how we are going to proceed and what needs to be done from your side. There will be a lot of questions that will be coming from your side. I'll definitely entertain each and every question that you ask, and the class will always be in a dialogue form. Okay, but कुछ चीजें they are like frequently asked questions that I'll answer it beforehand, and then बाद में आपके जो भी unique doubts हैं you can feel free to ask. The first thing that we'll start with theories, and these are the fundamental foundations of any discipline. Say Anthro has its own theories. आप लोगों ने जिन लोगों ने science पढ़ा है, तो physics, when you read physics, so you start with laws of motion and then you read any other topic after that. In the same way, these theories are the basics of any subject, and once you understand the theories, every other thing will be more like a cakewalk for you. So that's why we'll start with theories. People coming from science background, engineering background might feel something more difficult शुरुआत में, because it will be a first exposure to humanities and the things are not like LHS is equal to RHS. These are all opinions. जैसे मैंने आपको बहुत सारी कहानियां बताई हैं, we will all be reading those stories only. Okay, the opinions of some scholars, one who said this, the other who opposed this, the other who gave some other ideas, and so on and so forth. These are the theories. So please stay patient and just give some time, at least 2-3 weeks, to adjust. Don't be judgmental in the very first lecture or second lecture that this is beyond my capacity. You will gradually try, you will be able to understand this, but you have to be patient and at least stay patient for 2-3 weeks minimum. आपको समझ में आएगा चीजें. And second problem comes when as soon as I start theories, you will come and ask कि सर ये याद नहीं हो रहे, लिख नहीं पा रहे. The problem is not that you are not able to remember or recall. The problem is that you will eventually face in Anthro also, and you will be facing in GS, that if you are not able to recall, the problem is not कि याद नहीं है. Problem है कि आप verbatim लिखना चाहते हो. You are trying to recall verbatimly what is being taught in the class, what is being dictated in the class, which will always be impossible. You will not be able to remember each and every word the way I have dictated or any other teacher has dictated ever. You will always have to write it in your own words. And that's why as you try to write verbatimly, you will always face difficulties, you will always face demoralized. याद नहीं हो रहा, recall नहीं हो रहा. So don't try to remember things verbatimly. Try to understand it and then try to recall it, okay, in your own word. The third thing is, इसके अलावा क्या पढ़ना है. आपको सबके दिमाग में होगा कि what else should be read after the class to supplement, or is it सब टीचर बोलते हैं उनका पढ़ाया हुआ काफी है, आप भी यही बोलोगे. You have to check it by yourself. Okay, whatever topics that I teach in the class, just go home, buy a 10 years PYQ of anthropology. Just check out whatever questions have been asked from that topic in last 10 years. And if you are able to answer those questions from the content that we are discussing in the class, I believe you should stick with the content as long as the class goes on. Okay, because I have seen this change of the question from sir और क्या पढ़े to sir जो आप पढ़ा रहे हो वो काफी है. This is the transition happens as the content or the handouts that I'll be giving you, the material that I'll be sharing in the class piles up. वो सवाल बदल जाता है कि और कौन सी किताब पढ़ने से कि सर जो पढ़ा रहे हो वही पढ़ लें, बस उतना काफी है. You want my assurance there, and that's why I'm telling you कि as long till the time you are not reading whatever I have given to you, तब तक आप कुछ और मत पढ़ना. आपके पास बाद में टाइम है. You have read everything that I have shared in the class, every material that I have given to you. Practice 10 years question, then you can read whatever you want, your wish. Okay, but till then, don't read anything else. And if you're not able to answer any of the question in last 10 years from the topic that I have already covered in the class, then I should be held accountable for that. Just ask me कि ये topic आपने पढ़ा दिया, but I'm not able to answer this question. If I have skipped any content, I'll take it in the class or I'll share that content with you. So for that 6 months, what I request from you is a trust that I'll try to cover more than 95% of the topics in the class itself, and stay with it and just try to attempt last 10 years question out of it, and आपका एक basic minimum score in anthropology will be guaranteed if you follow this. Now how to actually solve that PYQs? So you all must have been made a member of that Telegram group. So that Telegram group is solely for answer writing only. So whenever a topic will be completed, maybe after third or fourth lecture, I'll start discussing the questions with you. Okay, and you should be able to write the answers, submit it in the Telegram group, and your answers will be evaluated, and you will get the evaluated copy in the same group within 2 to 3 days. Okay, so that group we can share the copies. Also, that group can be a place that can act as a repository of the knowledge. You can actually check your peer group's answer copies. You can learn from it rather than copying from it. Learn from it, that what my friend or other colleague is writing, what good things he or she is including in his or her answers. what thing can I copy from it, can learn from it, आपको उससे पता चलेगा. Okay, plus evaluated copy तो आपको मिलती रहेगी. Plus once this module, say some significant section of the syllabus is completed, then you will be asked to write some tests. Okay, maybe 7-8 tests, and that also depends upon the number of tests is not fixed or permanent कि 5 ही टेस्ट कराने हैं, 4 टेस्ट कराने हैं. As long as you contribute, you write the test, there will be as many tests as you want. But ऐसा होता है कि धीरे धीरे बहुत जोश होता है, पहला टेस्ट लिखने 100 लोग आते हैं, and then gradually the number declines, and by 4th or 5th test everybody or most of the people give up. So everything that I give depends upon how much you are interested for it. So suppose if I get a reciprocation from you that ठीक है पढ़ते हैं, I will go much deeper, more intense, और बहुत सारी और चीजें जो शायद सिलेबस में नहीं भी मेंशन है, but there is a probability that someday it can be asked. I'll try to cover it as much as possible. But that completely depends upon the mutual cooperation. But if you feel like कि ठीक है जितना पढ़ाना है 2 घंटे में क्लास खत्म करो और निकलो, I am kind of bound by the norms, so I'll have to follow the norms. जनता की डिमांड को फुलफिल करना पड़ेगा. Next thing, just try to make sure that once this class is over, you should have written at least 200 to 300 answers minimum. That is, on an average, you should have written 1 to 2 answers daily. इतना आपसे रिक्वेस्ट है, बस 1 से 2 आंसर आपको डेली लिखना है. एंड इफ दिस 6 months is the time duration of this class, that is 180 days, 300-350 आंसर्स अगर आप लोगों ने लिखे हैं, 200 से 300 आंसर्स आपने लिखे हैं, ट्रस्ट मी एज ए एल्डर ब्रदर, आपको एंथ्रो में देयर विल बी नो फियर फैक्टर इन्वॉल्व. एक बेसिक मिनिमम स्कोर इंश्योर्ड है. मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल्स हु आर स्ट्रगलिंग टू गेट मार्क्स इन ऑप्शनल, one major reason is that they have not practiced answer writing, and if they do not, this will become a problem forever. And if you try to postpone it, we usually postpone it कि कल perfect लिखेंगे, परसों perfect लिखेंगे, आज read करते हैं बस. That day will never come when you feel confident about your content and you will be able to write the perfect answer. The first answer will be a disastrous answer whenever you write it. Today, tomorrow, maybe 6 months later. But your answers will improve eventually as you write more and more answers. So by the end of this course, you should be at the top of your answer writing skills, specifically with respect to Anthro, and that can only happen if you write 1 or 2 answers daily. So please write at least 1 or 2 answers daily as we move ahead with this course, as per your convenience. Okay, आधा घंटा 40 मिनट आपको आंसर लिखने हैं. And what do I expect from you? 2.5 hours approximately will be the class, 10-15 minutes ऊपर नीचे. I expect 2 hours from you other than this 2.5 hours for self-study. Not more than that, in which 1 hour should be the revision where whatever we have read in the class, and 1 hour specifically for answer writing. So these 2 hours you have to give after the class for the coming 6 months, and if you do it, trust me, Anthro will be one of the strongest points that you will be having. Okay, so this is all from my side, and now whatever questions that you have, please feel free to ask. And even after in the class also, when we will be teaching some topics, also discussing some topics, feel free to ask any kind of questions that you feel, but at least ऐसा ना हो कि बस वो क्लास को डिस्टर्ब करे. just for the sake of क्वेश्चन पूछना, क्वेश्चन मत पूछिएगा. अगर आपको लगता है कि that definitely is a kind of problem there, तो आप तो please clear out करिए. So whatever you want to ask, please. कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है किसी के पास? या मैंने या प्लीज प्लीज. Low class people have constantly defame. The first thing is tendency to generalize. वो generalization नहीं करना चाहिए कि all the high class people are actually labeling or some kind of defaming the low class. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं होता. Okay. Usually we actually see the actions of 1 or 2 individuals more or less, and we actually generalize it as a tendency of the entire high class or entire low class. So They nahi, one person is making a derogatory remark. That is what I'm saying, not they. Who are they? Are all the high class people collectively coming together and saying something? So everybody is unique, and that is what we will be reading in Anthro, that every individual is unique. They have their own socialization, and that actually shapes their personality. Yes. How often do you need to revise? इसका आंसर है as many times as possible. Okay, there is no fixed number, but the more you revise, the better command you will be having. So if you have revised it 5 times, if you have an opportunity of revising it 6 times, do it. So there is no fixed number. As much revision you do, you will have a greater command on that subject. So आप जैसे weekends को, जैसे for example, you will at least have 1 holiday a week. So minimum 1 holiday or 2 holidays from now. So there you can use that 2 days to revise whatever have been taught in the class for the entire week, and maybe after the test, say maybe before the test, you can actually have another revision for whatever is the syllabus. So आपकी class में रहते रहते ही आपके 3-4 revision हो जाएंगे. That we'll discuss once I take the topic, and then I'll discuss some. But एक example के साथ discuss करना पड़ेगा. That will be better. So there I'll take up this question. इसके ऊपर थोड़ा सा बात करेंगे when I'll be talking about Indian society, because the term religion as we understand it now is something a Western concept. In fact, it's a concept related to Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism and Christian. Religion और God का idea ये Abrahamic है. India में there was no concept called as religion ever. It came to India, the idea of God came to India as we came in contact with Islamic society. Somewhere 6th, 7th century AD or 8th century AD, when we came in contact with Islamic society, then the idea of God, religion and all came to India. India, what we actually confuse with religiosity in India is spirituality. Okay, तो spirituality और religiosity को इंडिया में confuse कर दिया गया, हमने उसको धर्म बोल दिया, but वो धर्म जैसा कुछ नहीं था. धर्म, what we consider in Indian philosophy is more like an obligatory action on an individual. आपका वो धर्म है. So for example, being an IAS, your dharma is to serve the nation, but that is not your religion. But we have mistakenly confused the idea of religion with respect to dharma. Okay, so religiosity and spirituality is somewhat, spirituality was there in India. The idea of religiosity came with Islamic invasion, and then later on with British rule that came to India. अलग अलग थ्योरीज है उसके ऊपर. निएंडरथल्स के सर्वाइवल या एक्सटिंक्शन की, वन ऑफ द मोस्ट प्रोमिनेंट थ्योरी इज क्लाइमेट चेंज, because Neanderthals body was more suitable for living in cold climate, and when this ice age was ending, so when we were moving towards pluvial ages, say warming of earth was happening, glaciers were melting, so their body was not suitable for survival. One theory, one of the most accepted theory. Anything else? आप कुछ पूछ रहे? Solved PYQs. हाँ, इसके बारे में बात करनी थी मुझे. Please stay away from solved PYQs from at least for the 6 months. Why I am asking you this thing? प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है कि आपने solved PYQs लिया तो आपके पास questions हैं और उसके answers हैं. You are not using an iota of your brain. You have some information that you will be gathering from the classes. आपको कुछ topic पढ़ाया जाएगा, you will learn something from the classes, and then you will be using those, your brain, your intelligence actually to structure that raw material and making it or framing it like an answer. You will be making your brain grow through that exercise multiple times, maybe 300 times as if you write 300 answers. But if you are referring to any solved PYQs, what actually happens, you never made your brain go through that process once in your lifetime. And the questions will exactly not the same in the mains. Theme repeat होंगी, but the questions will not repeat exactly, isn't it? and you have not written a single answer by yourself by structuring the information by yourself. What will happen when you see a question? You will replicate the answer that you have read in the solved PYQ. You have never made your brain process any kind of information and structure it properly in the form of an answer. And कुछ भी थोड़ा सा नया क्वेश्चन आता है, people go blank. because आपने अपने ब्रेन को ट्रेन ही नहीं किया वैसे. And since you have not exercised that much, so you don't know. So it's just like making a dish. Okay. So when you make a dish, there are a lot of raw materials available. Some spices, some salt, some vegetables, oil, and it's not that कि सबको एक साथ डाल दिया and the dish will be created. They have to be put in the cooking pan at a particular time in a particular volume after a certain instance. Okay, say पहले आपको oil डालना पड़ेगा and then you will be putting some spices and then vegetables and then so on and so forth, and then finally the dish is created or cooked. But what actually happens, you have to go through that process multiple times in order to be a good chef, isn't it? Just by watching it on YouTube, how that dish is created, you cannot become a chef, isn't it? The same is the case in answer writing. If you do not practice it by yourself, if you follow any solved PYQs, I'm not, मतलब ऐसा नहीं बोल रहा कि आप उसको देखो ही मत, but for 6 months, just try to write answers by yourself. After that, you can just refer it for the structures और बहुत सारे hints लेने के लिए. But हमारा brain literally बहुत ज़्यादा lazy है. We have the tendency of procrastinating. And if you have the solved answer in front of you, I dare you, nobody will ever feel like कि मैं खुद से answer लिख लूँ. You'll feel like कि यही answer देख लेते हैं, इसी को copy कर लेंगे. Exam में याद हो जाएगा. And since you are copying it from the solved PYQs, literally the same question will not come, your brain will go blank. Plus, what actually happens, whatever you are reading in the class will become redundant. कोई भी solved PYQs में कितने means it will be like an answer of 200, 250, 300 words. If you read 300 words, you will be remembering only 150 words. Okay, or you will be able to reproduce only 150 words in the exam hall. That's why you need to read at least 1000, 1500 words so that at least you have a solid content of 500 words that you can recall in the exam hall. So I humbly request you that do not refer to solved PYQs in the initial stage, and आपको innovate, आप सबकी अपनी अपनी strength है that you are going to discover while answer writing. Some people have a good tendency to think in the form of flow charts. आप किसी भी कंटेंट को फ्लो चार्ट्स के फॉर्म में बहुत बेहतर बता सकते हो. आप में से कुछ लोग ऐसे होंगे. Some people have better good writing, handwritings, or a better ability to express your content maybe by your English, by your way. You will discover your strengths and weaknesses while you will be writing or structuring the answer by yourself. And that is a process that all must go through in order to have a command on answer writing. Please, शुरुआत में for GS also and for Anthro, as you are going through that process, write the answers by yourself. और पहला आंसर हमेशा seriously बहुत disastrous होगा, but eventually you will improvise. And that solved PYQ is referred by multiple of the students. If you want to create any kind of uniqueness, तो भी आपको खुद से आंसर लिखना होगा. Just cannot copy it, which is being referred by multiple thousands of students. आपकी uniqueness content से नहीं आ सकती. आपकी uniqueness उस content को express करने के तरीके से आ सकती. One very good analogy that I give is like, suppose if you go to a dhaba and a 5-star restaurant, you order the same dish there. ठीक है, आपने पनीर की भुजिया ऑर्डर की ढाबे में भी and the 5-star restaurant also. The dhaba will cost you 50-60 rupees for that dish, while 5-star restaurant will cost you 500 for the same dish. What's the difference actually? Content is more or less similar. वो भी सेम ही चीज डालेगा पनीर की भुजिया बनाने में, वो अलग से कोई सब्जी नहीं डाल रहा. But they are charging 10 times of what is being charged at the dhaba is because of the presentation. That gives you a moral that the same content can be presented in multiple different ways, and the same content can fetch you very poor score, while the same content, if presented properly, can get you very high score. The game is about the presentation, which you will learn by your practice only. कहीं से आप copy करोगे, not possible at all. Okay, anything else? I'll be taking some online questions also. How to make running notes? इसके लिए सबसे so I request you मतलब आप लोग शायद लूज शीट्स अगर लेके आएंगे तो that will be good for you. नोट मेकिंग में बढ़िया रहता है वो. Some people prefer registers, आपकी जो भी choices, but I would suggest loose sheets is better. Whenever you have a loose sheet, what you can do is just divide into two halves. One side you can go by running notes, whatever I'll explain, just make the notes. Okay, and on the left side, when I dictate something of the same content or same topic, you can actually make the dictated notes. So आपके running notes will be parallel to your dictated notes. Now what is the difference between the running notes and the dictated notes? Running notes will be more in a layman term. मतलब हमारी जिस तरीके से I was discussing all these things with you, the same language I'll be using while explaining any concept. And then I'll dictate it, which will be more organized form. थोड़ा सा relatively more sophisticated, some more organized form of English will be there. And that actually will give you a sense of confidence. Some keywords will be there, some kind of anthropological terms will be there that can be replicated in the exam. But you don't have to remember the dictated notes verbatimly. Okay, running notes will be the best source for your revision, for your actually recalling any kind of topic. आप अपने लिखे हुए running notes को within 15 minutes, 10 minutes पूरी class को revise कर सकते हो. So please make this running notes in this format कि एक side of the page will be running notes and the other side will be the dictated notes. Okay. Then do you give daily questions for practice? Yes, initially I'll be giving some questions for practice. I'll be discussing it on every Saturday or Sunday. There will be discussion for PYQs only. Sometimes I'll be taking, sometimes there is a ma'am, she'll be taking those PYQs discussion. Okay, and the answers will be evaluated. You have to submit your copy on the Telegram group. It will be evaluated and it will be posted after evaluation there itself. Okay. Are you providing any books? So I'll be giving you whatever topic that I'll be covering in the class, I'll be giving you a handout also with respect to that particular topic. Say tomorrow that I'll be starting with classical evolutionism, the first theory, I'll be sharing the handouts with you as. So you can use it as a standard material for that. Okay, but primarily, as long as I do not ask you, you can actually rely on the class notes and the running notes. That will be because every topic will be comprehensively covered in the class itself. So अगर आपके पास time नहीं है, तो you can solely rely on class notes as long as I do not ask you to read the handouts for a particular topic. Okay. 2 hours, 30 minutes class, 2 hours for revision and answer writing. Notes के लिए क्या sir? Notes आप क्लास में बना रहे हो, आप एक ही चीज को बार बार क्यों करोगे? You are making the running notes, you are getting the dictated notes. What else do you want to do for the notes? मतलब आपको क्या करना है? आपको किताब थोड़ी ना छापनी है यहाँ पे. Okay, so notes are being done in the class, and rather than making again short notes and all multiple times, spend more time in answer writing. Okay, that will be more effective an exercise compared to making different types of notes. ये थोड़े से filtered notes हैं, फिर और छोटे notes हैं, और छोटे छोटे notes बनाए जा रहे हैं बार बार. Don't go for that. Okay. Moreover, you must be thinking कि short notes बनाने चाहिए नहीं बनाने चाहिए. बिल्कुल बनाने चाहिए. But at least once you have done, till the time you have done 3-4 readings of a particular topic, you should not be making short notes because the short notes will be equally long as the long notes. पहली reading के बाद आपको क्योंकि सब important लगता है. And what will happen? I have done this and I can tell you. तो आप पहली reading के बाद if you make the short notes, only thing that changes is the size of the font. Font छोटा हो जाता है and that's why 10 pages का notes आप 8 pages में लाके रख दोगे. Nothing else will change. So at least once you have done 3 to 4 readings of the same topic, till the time that time don't make short notes. There's no point of it. Plus आप उसको read भी multiple times कर पाओगे. If you अगर आपने short note बना लिया पहली बार में ही, so then you will not be reading the content for multiple times. You will forget the finer points which actually you might not be able to recall in the exam. So short notes at least after 3-4 readings. Will all handouts and notes be available in soft copy or online students, and where can we access? So for online student it will be soft copy and for offline it will be given printed form. अब क्योंकि हर क्लास के बाद देना है तो हर बार every day we cannot just courier it to the student, so it will be too costly for us. So for online student, it will be in the form of soft copy. Which theory we are starting from? The first theory, classical evolutionism. Can online students give the test offline? Most welcome. One question is how to handle both GS and Anthro together. So how many of you are doing GS classes as well right now? Majority. Okay, मतलब prepare तो सभी कर रहे हैं. Definitely, if you are preparing for civil services, so you have to prepare for GS. The problem is if you have one another class after this or before this, so then it creates a problem for allocating the time. So approximately आप ये मान के चलो that you will be able to give 10 hours to your preparation. Approximately. Rest 14 hours, 8 hours of sleep, 2-3 hours of food and all such kind of activities, 2-3 hours for leisure. 10 hours will be approximately given for your studies. Now in this case, if you're going for GS classes, I will say that just give 60 to 40 का जो allocation है in GS versus Anthro. That should be the case. 6 hours should be given to GS, in which if you are giving say 2.5 hours for your classes, then 3.5 hours for your revision and your answer writing, whatever you are doing. Okay. And similarly, 4.5 hours for Anthro, 2.5 hours of classes and 2 hours for revision. So that is the time that you should be given. Say approximately 5.5 hours for revision or self-study should be given. अब इस केस में the only thing that will trouble you, देखो ये टाइम तो आप चाहते नहीं चाहते हुए देना पड़ेगा आपको सिविल सर्विसेज के लिए, but only thing that will trouble that we are not in a habit to change the mindset कि आप हमारी हैबिट ऐसी है कि एक ही सब्जेक्ट को पूरे दिन पढ़ते हैं. It becomes very difficult to actually switch from one subject to another for 50% of the time in the day. Okay, now you have to develop this. There is no alternative of it. You have to develop it. But in some days, if you feel like कि आपसे revise नहीं हो रहा है कुछ ऐसा, you are not able to switch from one subject to another, what you can do is use weekends for optional, because there will not be classes there, and you can give more time to the optional. If you in some days, maybe 2 दिन weekdays, maybe if you are not able to revise your optional, then you can use an extra time for weekends, say the entire 4.5 hours, because there will not be any class, so you can use that 4.5 hours solely for revision of whatever you have read in the class or for answer writing. So weekend में थोड़ा ज़्यादा time आप optional को दे सकते हो compared to weekdays में अगर if you are not able to switch from GS subjects. Okay, but overall 60-40 का allocation होना चाहिए for this time period if you are going for GS classes as well. Okay. Two sheets ऐसा होता है कि because नोट्स वगैरह में ना आपको बहुत सारे मॉडिफिकेशंस करने पड़ेंगे. अगर आपके रजिस्टर्स बन जाते हैं, इफ यू वांट टू ऐड वन पेज, तो बहुत बल्कि सा बहुत अजीब तरीके से अनऑर्गेनाइज टाइप के नोट्स बनते हैं. टू शीट्स में आप बहुत सारी चीजें ऐड करोगे, कभी कभी हटाओगे, या उसमें ऐड करना या कोई नोट्स शीट्स वगैरह ऐड करना, इट बिकम्स रिलेटिवली ईजी कंपेयर टू रजिस्टर्स वगैरह में. बट इफ यू कंफर्टेबल विद द रजिस्टर्स, ऐसा नहीं है कि इट्स लाइक ए हार्ड एंड फास्ट रूल. हाँ, वन थिंग दैट आई कैन आस्क इज प्लीज डोंट or try to avoid using iPads for making notes. Okay, that's the most convenient way. कि आप उसमें modifications can be done by multiple ways. But what I have seen in the exam hall itself, okay, a lot of people have their entire practice writing on iPads throughout their entire preparation. And what happens when they're writing mains ka paper, even using that hard sheet, they're doing like this. That memory is so deep that they are like using this finger, sliding the paper जब वो मेंस का पेपर लिख रहे होते हैं या फिर यहाँ पे टेस्ट सीरीज वगैरह में लिख रहे होते हैं, बिकॉज देयर माइंड इज एक्चुअली ट्रेन्ड लाइक दैट. एंड आपकी जो मिस्टेक्स करने की एबिलिटी है वो कभी रेक्टिफाई होगी नहीं. बिकॉज आईपैड में देयर इज ऑलवेज ए पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ एडिटिंग, वट एवर यू हैव रिटन डिलीट कर सकते हो, एंड दैट्स व्हाई देयर इज नो इंसेंटिव टू रिड्यूस मिस्टेक्स इन स्पेलिंग्स और राइटिंग. आप बार बार जितनी बार मिस्टेक करो आप उतनी बार एडिट कर सकते हो. बट आप यहाँ पे लिखोगे, यू विल अंडरस्टैंड कि यहाँ पे गड़बड़ियाँ हैं, आपके नोट्स में बार बार रिफ्लेक्ट करेगा. यू विल ऑलवेज रिफ्लेक्ट अपॉन इट एंड यू विल ट्राई टू रेक्टिफाई इट. तो प्लीज, एज लॉन्ग एज द पैटर्न इज लाइक दिस, इट डज नॉट शिफ्ट टू ऑनलाइन मोड, तब तक ट्राई टू अवॉइड यूजिंग आईपैड्स फॉर मेकिंग नोट. ओके जिस मोड में आपको एग्जाम मेंस एग्जाम लिखना है उसी मोड में आप प्रिपरेशन करो. इट विल एक्चुअली प्रिपेयर यू बेटर फॉर द एग्जाम. ओके. Value addition. Sir, what about value addition? Okay. Now this is something that everybody is bothered about. Value addition, like suppose करो कि you are supposed to make a building of 5 stories. 5 माले की बिल्डिंग बनानी है. Value addition is the 5th story. Okay. ये जो 5वां माला है वो उसको आप value addition करोगे एंथ्रोपोलॉजी के रिस्पेक्ट में. But in order to make that 5th story, you first have to create the building and reach to the 4th floor, and then you can create that 5th floor, right? But what's the point of creating the 5th floor? 5th floor cannot be created in the air, and abhi 4 floor to bane hi nahi hai. So the thing is ki first learn the basics, make or consolidate your foundation basic concepts. Once you reach that phase where you are very much aware and say clear about the concepts, in that case you can go for value addition. वहाँ पे उसका सेंस बनता है. So what we say is that some basic concept आपको basic clarity है तो like you can easily manage to get 270 280 in the mains. Now everybody is desiring this score 300 plus 310 320 something इस तरीके के score लेके आप imagine कर रहे होगे, dream ले रहे होगे. Now that extra 30-40 marks definitely can be attained by some doing some kind of value addition. And most of us are concerned about that 30-40 marks extra. But what I am concerned about, पहले यहाँ तक तो पहुँचो. First reach that level that you are sure that you will be getting 270 280 at least, and then you can think of that extra 30 that can differentiate you from others. But अभी तो journey शुरू हुई है. You have not yet reached that 270 280 वाला level. How can you think of that 310? That 30 marks उस पे ज़्यादा एनर्जी नहीं लगानी है अभी. First focus here, and then we can think of that extra 30 marks. और वो सबको आपको बेसिक समझ में आने के बाद समझ में आ जाएगा कहाँ से वैल्यूएशन. You all have to be aware. आपके आसपास आपको एंथ्रोपोलॉजी के एग्जाम्पल्स दिखेंगे सामने से. It's all about you need to be aware, conceptually clear, and when you're reading the newspaper you will find tens of examples हर दिन that can be quoted, but you need to be clear about the basic concepts. Okay. Can you please tell about which units you are referring in the class? अभी तो कोई भी unit नहीं है. Tomorrow we'll start with unit 6. How to cover anthropology current affairs? We'll try to deal all the current affairs related to anthropology in the class itself and in the group that will be जहाँ पे मैं I'll be sharing certain contents जो भी है. So I'll be sharing there also. Some news आ जाती है important तो I'll be sharing there itself. What about the IGNU material? Yes, IGNU material is one of the best material for any optional. But आपको जो handouts मिलेंगे, I am not an author. I express it कि मैं कोई author नहीं हूँ, मैंने खुद से कुछ नहीं लिखा है. So whatever handouts that will be given to you, it's compiled from whatever best is available in the market material. जो भी, be it from IGNU, be it from any standard sources. I have read it all, I have compiled it, and that's there in your handouts itself. So आपको you don't have to worry about that you are missing out on something. Because if it is good and it is available in the market, that is there in your handouts for sure. I can assure you about that. Okay. Can we ask evaluators to assess answers of Anthro written for questions other than what you give or other than PYQs? ये group में आप कोई भी question Anthro से related आप answer करोगे and you can post it freely and that will get evaluated. It's not necessarily restricted only to PYQs. But make sure that you restrict yourself with respect to the topics that is being dealt in the class. ऐसा नहीं है कि that we are dealing with theories and you are writing the answers for tribals. Some people might be जिन्होंने खुद से study कर रखी होगी या कुछ ऐसा है तो don't go by that. That will create a kind of लोगों को भी थोड़ा problem आती है and the evaluator will also feel some kind of difficulties. So stick to the topic. Whatever questions related to that topic you want to answer, just write it and put it in on Telegram group and that will get evaluated. Don't worry. Okay. We have classes from Monday to Friday. What to do on Saturday and Sunday? यार हम आज़ाद देश के आज़ाद नागरिक हैं। सैटरडे संडे को आपको जो भी करना है यू कैन डू इट। आई हैव टोल्ड यू कि अगर बाकी टाइम तो यही 60-40 का टाइम है, 10 hours ऑफ स्टडी, दैट इज एप्लीकेबल फॉर सैटरडे संडे एज वेल। बाकी स्टिल इफ यू हैव सम स्पेयर टाइम यू कैन डू वट एवर यू विश। एनीथिंग एल्स? ये तो कुछ पर्सनल क्वेश्चन है, आप पर्सनली मिलेंगे तो आई कैन गिव यू सम बेटर आइडियाज ऑल्सो। Anything else you want to ask? Yes, please. Diagram making, yes. Now there is some kind of a misconception that diagrams will get you more score. Okay. Now diagrams ko leke the misconception is because several people they have referred this flowchart also as diagrams. These are not diagrams. These are just infographics that are easily made by the people. Okay. And talking about say diagrams like जो physical anthropology में when we'll be dealing with evolution and all, skulls, human anatomy and all, very few people in this class have the ability to draw it. People from the medical background, they might have the ability, or maybe some people who are good in art, maybe they have the ability to sketch it with free hand within 10-15 seconds. अगर आप 10-15 seconds में sketch नहीं कर सकते, there is no point of making diagram because I have seen people like they are drawing the diagram of skulls like this, ऐसा सा, जिससे कुछ भी डिलीवर नहीं हो रहा, कुछ भी आप इंफॉर्मेशन डिलीवर नहीं कर रहे हो. इट्स जस्ट फॉर द सेक ऑफ ड्रॉइंग डायग्राम, यू हैव जस्ट ड्रॉन द डायग्राम. इफ दिस इज द केस, आप ड्रॉ मत करो, बिकॉज ये नंबर दिलाने की बजाय आधे नंबर कटवा जरूर देगा. ओके, एंड वेदर डायग्राम मेकिंग प्लेज अ रोल. अगर आपकी डायग्राम मेकिंग सच में बहुत अच्छी है तो दैट कैन गेट यू सम हाफ और 1 marks एक्स्ट्रा, और थ्रू आउट द पेपर कैन गेट यू लाइक 2-3 marks or 4 marks एक्स्ट्रा. But it will not be playing an important role in your selection or a good score or not. मेरे केस में I have scored 324, 316 in 2016 and 17 वाले attempt में, and I drew diagram only of India map. India का map बनाया, उसके अलावा कुछ भी, क्योंकि मेरी drawing अच्छी नहीं है. Okay, and I never tried my hands on it drawing the images of skull, जो बहुत ही ज़्यादा बेकार घटिया बनेंगे, तो there is no point of drawing it. So if you're comfortable, just try to do it. If you're not, don't worry about it, it won't harm you. Anything else? Do you recommend any standard books for reference? If so, can you please name them? यार वही वाली बात है कि स्टैंडर्ड बुक्स अगर आपको पढ़ना है तो एम्बर आप मतलब खरीदना चाहते हैं तो आप एम्बर खरीद सकते हैं. 800-900 रुपए की किताब है. दैट विल गिव यू साइकोलॉजिकल सेटिस्फैक्शन. You have a book, but trust me, you will not be able to read it within 6 months. आप लेना चाहें तो एक बार लेके खत्म करने की कोशिश करिए. It's a very good book, good read, very interesting, but depends upon your discretion if you want it. I won't be saying that कि कल आप एम्बर से पढ़ के आना. आपको लेना है तो आप ले लीजिए. It's a very good book. How can we apply anthropology concepts in GS? क्लास करते हैं, समझ लेते हैं, फिर एप्लीकेशन भी देख लेंगे उस समय. Okay, but let's first begin this and let me explain the concepts, first understand it and then we'll be able to apply there. But बहुत सारे ऐसे areas हैं जहाँ पे there is an overlap. One is basically Indian society, paper 1. So we'll be dealing almost every aspect of Indian society here in anthropology: women, caste, tribe, elderly, village and all. Majority of the topics and the social processes like urbanization, globalization, industrialization will be dealt here in anthropology. So there is a big overlap. Then some parts of biotechnology, that is science and tech, GS paper 3, that is also covered in physical anthropology, that is will be dealt here completely. Essay में काफी सारे ऐसे topics हैं, since we are reading Indian society and all, so that will give you an edge to write certain essays talking about some social issues that are very much relevant for India. Okay. और कुछ? No. I would rather recommend, देखिए आप पहले पढ़ के आओगे तो एक प्रॉब्लम होती है कि आपको एक पेज पढ़ने में 2 घंटे लगेंगे, because that topic is relatively new for you. Okay, and since you are not familiar with that topic, it will take more time for you to grasp that topic, and that might create some kind of incorrect understandings also. तो वो utility of time बेहतर नहीं है. Rather, I would suggest class के बाद just try to revise it. No matter what happens, you will be revising whatever I have dealt in the class. वो ज़्यादा important है. Okay, so not expecting you to come to class reading something. So what's the purpose of me then? I'll make the thing simple. आप वहाँ पे वो पढ़ाऊंगा and then go home and revise it. Okay. So I think I have addressed almost every question. So we'll see you tomorrow, same time, 11:15, and we'll begin the theories tomorrow. That's it for today. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.